Okay, so in this video I'm going to replace a gearbox on a terrain or Ryder golf buggy. You'll need two 3mm Allen keys, which I'll show you why later. You may need something to cut away some cable ties. You'll also need a Phillips head attachment. I'm using mine in the drill. You can use the Phillips head screwdriver, whatever you prefer. We'll start off by removing these housings on either side. These hold the fourth wheel in place, so we'll start off by removing them. So remove those two screws at the bottom. Now there's two more bolts here and there's nuts on the other side, so I like to hold the nut in position so that it doesn't fall out while you're removing them. Otherwise you'll find it very difficult to remove and separate the nut from the bolt. So both of them have become loose now, and we'll work on the other side. Again, moving these two screws from the base and supporting these nuts in their housing so that they don't round off or become hard to disconnect. You'll feel the bolt work its way out. Okay, so they're both out. You can let the nuts drop down because you'll be able to gain access to them later, and then we'll just remove each of these supports. They can be a little bit difficult sometimes to remove, so sometimes you just need to give a bit more of assistance, like so. And again, popping the other one out and putting that to the side. So trying to keep everything in the same area so you don't lose track of what belongs where. Next we'll remove these two screws from the bottom here. That's one. And two. Put them to the side. Next I'll remove the wishbone or the sidearm. So there's just one bolt with a nut on the other side, but should be able to just lightly remove it and pull it out of its position. And again on the other side. Not putting too much pressure on anything, just letting it work its way out naturally and pulling it out like so. Now you'll notice that your wishbone is disconnected. And then I'll work on removing the motor next. So there's 3 points to remove. So that's 1, 2, 3. So that's 3 bolts. Keep them all together there. And you can disconnect the motor from the gearbox. You'll see that there's a gasket there. You want to keep that gasket when you're putting it onto your new gearbox. You may need to remove a cable tie that's connecting this. And we'll just disconnect the motor. There's 2 leads. This is the lead that connects to the solenoid, and this is the power lead. So we'll remove them and put the motor to the side. Next I'll remove the motor controller. So there's 4 screws that we need to remove. That's 1, 2, 3 and 4. Now you don't need to fully remove this, you can just put it to the side just so you can gain access to everything. I'll put the screws to the side. I'll just disconnect this wire to make it a bit easier as well. Just push that to the side. Next we'll remove this support bracket. 1, 2 and 3. Give it a bit of a wiggle and it should pop out. Just keep those screws into position there. So you'll notice that everything's now removed, but you still can't actually get anything to come out of position. So that's because there's a bolt that's going through the lower handle and connecting through this area here, which is where your gearbox also connects as well. So you'll need to remove these rubber plugs. There's one on either side. You might need a flathead screwdriver if you can't get it out. I'm just using my nails at the moment. And this is where the 3mm Allen keys come in handy. So one on either bolt on either side. Now this might be difficult to remove, so sometimes you need to give it a bit of a tap with a punch just to allow the Loctite to break, and therefore you can get this nut and bolt removed properly. this bolt, and as you see here, there's just a small bolt going into a thicker one. So once that's removed, you should be able to slide this thick bolt all the way out of position like I am here. It comes out the other side. So pulling that out, put it to the side, and that allows you to access the whole chassis. So you can basically pull it all away and remove the entire gearbox. So to get rid of the gearbox, you literally just have to pull it away from the chassis like so. For the sake of this video, I won't pull it any further, but you just tap it until the whole thing comes out. You might need a mallet or something like that. And then same way, just to fit the new one, pushing it back into position like so until the holes are aligned. And then you'll notice that you've got these points here that need to all align when you reassemble. So if you try and keep this whole area as is, it'll be a lot easier when you're reassembling. So sliding these and this housing, pushing that up, so allowing everything to sink through, and you'll notice that here has to align properly. So you just make sure that you can see through this hole here, which is where the bolt's going to go back through. Now before I do that, there's one other thing that I'll let you know about, is it's easier now if you fit these housings back into position. So I might actually do them right now. So the reason being is that it's easier to put the little nuts that you've removed back into position. So they should be sitting under here. There's 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then we'll sit these back into position. So we'll start by fitting the nut into its housing underneath, and then fastening the bolt. So that's 1, it's 2, and the one with the lever is always on the right hand side. Fastening that back into position, and the nut so that's in like so, and then the final nut till it's in there, and until firm. Okay, so now that you've got these housing on, it's a lot easier than having to do that later on down the track. So again, connecting this battery tray to the housing properly, and then aligning the base of the arm and the hole correctly, and sliding through this large piece until it's around the other side. You have your small bolt that connects using your 3mm Allen key. You should be able to just find the thread there and tighten it up using the 3mm Allen key on the other side, then tightening until firm. Okay, so that's nice and firm. Then you want to fit the rubber plugs back into position like so, one on the other side. Okay, next we'll put the housing back on. Screw them up until firm. When reassembling, it's probably good to have it on a lower torque setting just so you don't strip through any of the plastic or anything like that. We'll work on the side arms here. Now there's a nut that's actually located in this side arm on either side, so just be careful not to push that out of position. So when I reassemble, I'm actually do it quite light so that you don't push the nut out of its housing. Like so, and again on the other side, just locating that. Okay, so that's done on either side. Again, as I mentioned, you want your gasket to be in the right position. So this one here, there's 2 grooves on the gasket. And you'll see that's one groove, and that's the other groove. It's been a little bit massacred from the bolt that went in last time, but just for the sake of this video, we'll just put it into position so that we can mount it. Can't waste too much time. And we're going to connect the motor we'll connect the motor controller next. So making sure that that O-ring's in position, white to white, and then screwing that until firm, and then tucking that wire underneath out of the way, and then sitting the motor controller back into its position, having this wire come up this way, and then you can sit it into position like so, like that. Now, as I mentioned, you want your torque setting quite light because you can easily strip these screws when you're putting them back into the housing, so just be careful as you reassemble. Oops. Let's try and locate that. That's one down. 2. 3. And the 4th. Okay, so now we'll get on to connecting the motor to the gearbox. As I mentioned, just making sure that gasket's aligned properly. This isn't the best, and I wouldn't use this, but for the sake of this video, we'll just continue on. So plugging your motor into the gearbox, it should just sit in pretty easily. If you have trouble, you might just need to move the gearbox slightly, like I've just done then, and that allows it to free up. Now you want to also align the 3 holes, and then fastening again with the Phillips head screwdriver. So that's 1. 2. And 3. Okay, and again making sure that O-ring is in position, and you've got dot to dot, fastening the solenoid connection. At this time I would also cable tie just around here. I don't have any with me at the moment, and then I'd tuck it underneath so that it's out of the way from any debris or anything that might flick up while you're driving. Again, dot to dot, O-ring in position, and screwing the power source nice and firm, and then I would tuck everything away and possibly put another cable tie around the whole thing through here just to keep it nice and neat. Okay. Next we've got the 4 screws that connect the housing to the gearbox, so we'll put them into position. And then finally after this is these last 2 screws which connect the battery tray to the gearbox. 1 and 2. Okay, so that's how to replace a gearbox on a Terrain or a Ryder golf buggy. Thanks for watching.